Good vibrations.
So it's an old gag, but welcome back to Good Vibrations, to the only CDC that's worth listening to. That was one that I invented back in the COVID era. It's welcome back to Clive de Carle. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be with you again.
Yeah, I thought it was about time we had another conversation. We spoke last year. We've had a few chats in the past. And you've pretty much become the go-to guy in, dare we refer to it as the truth slash alternative scene, got to call it something, when it comes to natural holistic health and well-being and breaking through the veil of lies and propaganda peddled by the big pharma industry. I seem to be that guy for the music industry, and you seem to be that guy for all that stuff. So I thought there'd be value in having another conversation of this nature, because we continue to face multiple challenges and threats to our health, of course, from the sky, from the food, from the water. And the last time we spoke, you presented the revelation that tobacco in its raw form has been systematically demonized in organized society, and it may actually bring many health benefits that we don't normally get told about before all the carcinogens are added to cigarettes and such. And I think many people would have found that surprising because of the way we've been entrained to think of tobacco. So I wondered if this time around you had any new surprising revelations of this nature which go against what we're routinely told.
Well, yes, I guess so. I mean, the one that I discovered a couple of weeks ago, there's a lot of new research that's been going on. They've now linked Nurofen, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, over-the-counter drug, which in America would be known as NSAIDs. They've now proven that if women take it in pregnancy, when they give birth, the child is 6 times more likely to have ADHD. And if they give birth to a boy, he will be 3 times more likely to have ADHD. I mean, as you probably observed, I think most people have observed, ADHD is the disease of the year. It's the one that everybody thinks they have. And could it be that either their mum or they have been taking Nurofen, taking ibuprofen? And I've been warning about ibuprofen for over 20 years because of the damage it does to, virtually every part of the body. But this was new to me. And while I'm sure there are lots of causes for ADHD, most of them drug-induced, I think this is a big one because they sell Nurofen, ibuprofen in every uh, every petrol station.
Yeah. Every supermarket.
Yeah. So people don't realize how dangerous these over-the-counter drugs and paracetamol, which is, you could say, a little bit better. If you take more than 8 at once, you die from liver failure over the next week in a very painful, nasty way. People
So I've
take them
heard.
like Smarties, not realizing.
Mm. And the conventional advice seems to be to alternate between paracetamol and ibuprofen. So, you can pop two paracetamol and then they say it's fine to pop two ibuprofen as well. So you could be taking a lot of these into your system over 24 hours and it could be doing a lot of damage from what you're saying.
Well, I would avoid ibuprofen entirely and look for more natural remedies, which we could get into a little bit later. But the other bit of news that's really shocking, I mean, has anybody noticed that people don't seem to be able to control themselves the way they used to? That some people get into, addicted to gambling, or some people, it might be compulsive shopping. But with some people, it's compulsive sex addiction. Turns out a Parkinson's drug that's been made for the last 20 years called Requip or ropinirole um, is now tied to extreme compulsive behaviors, hypersexuality being one of them. So the perversity we're seeing in the world, could it be something to do with drugs that people are being given, which are knocking out their ability to absorb vitamins like vitamin B3 or all the B vitamins, which are generally speaking to do with happiness? How many people have been told, you've got an autoimmune disease? I mean, that's what they told me 40 odd years ago when I got damaged by an antibiotic and got rheumatoid arthritis. I cured myself 40 years ago, but the doctors didn't know how to do that. And they said, I'd got an autoimmune disease. Somehow my body was fighting against itself. Somehow, miraculously, my pancreas um, had decided not to like me anymore. And, this was a lie. I was poisoned by an antibiotic, and most of everybody else has been poisoned with, when they were at school, they had all these inoculations, unproven science. And then most people have had an antibiotic or a drug of some kind from the doctor. And what the doctor should be doing is apologizing for having injected you or given you all these dangerous drugs over the years, because it's not autoimmunity. I don't believe your body would ever fight against you. I think it's poisoning and the body adapting to that poison state. I mean, for instance, if you're low on certain vitamins, let's say you're low on vitamin D3, which you get with sunshine, vitamin K2, which you get from grass-fed animal products at the right time of year anyway. If the body is in deficiency of those two, it will drag what it needs from the bones to make up the difference. And the body's very adaptive. If it hasn't got enough of one thing, it'll use something else. And so many people don't get enough sunshine. They're maybe vegans and therefore probably not getting any or enough vitamin K2. So simple deficiencies, which are so easy to fix, and inexpensively. I mean, a year's supply of a good quality vitamin D isn't going to cost more than about £20 for an entire year, and people don't know this. It should be taught at school.
Absolutely. Did you know anything about natural health before you got ill yourself, or did you just educate yourself from that point on?
Yeah, no, stupidly, I knew a lot. When I was 16, I got introduced to healthy eating. A girl I knew was macrobiotic, and she explained how that worked. That was interesting. I used homeopathy, herbs. I was really into natural health right from the start. And then I got stupid. I got so stupid, and I went to a doctor, and he gave me an antibiotic for something that I could have treated myself just by a change of diet. Um, and that landed me up, as I am now, 40 plus years later, with type 1 diabetes, which I've never been able to cure. Type 2 is easy, but type 1 I've never been able to figure out. But I've never had rheumatoid arthritis again since I started taking supplements. Magnesium. Anybody's got a pain, magnesium is number one to fix it.
You're able to keep your diabetes type 1 at bay, though, are you, to sort of stem the tide a bit?
I'm not, no, not particularly. I'm probably better than 90% of people. But when I first started 40 years ago, I decided, right, I'm going to eat the same meal every day for a week. I'm not going to adjust my diet at all. I'm going to keep it absolutely steady. Therefore, my blood sugar should be absolutely steady. But it wasn't. It turned out I quickly discovered that my emotional state affected my blood sugar just as much as the food I was eating. Also, the advice they gave you 40 years ago was wrong, basically. So it was what I learned when I was reading books in hospital to figure out how I could get myself better, and then what I learned later, that now, 40 years later, has become quite useful, because now I see it much more simply than I did when I was ill. I hated being ill. It was horrendous not being able to get dressed, stuff like that. But I'm grateful to it now because it gave me a career, and it's when you get grateful to the past and see what the lesson was in it, and how you hopefully have learnt the lesson and grown from that. I think the more terrible things happen to you, the higher you can rise.
Sure. So, what would be a good alternative to paracetamol if you've got a splitting headache?
Well, magnesium would be number one. I mean, most people get a headache for two reasons: dehydration and magnesium deficiency. Magnesium means you can't relax your mind or any other part of your body properly. And so if it gets worse, then you might find that you get a migraine. If it gets worse, you might find you've got epilepsy. Dehydration and magnesium deficiency are rife with most people. I think it'd be fair to say that probably 95% of the population of England, and I dare say America, would be low on magnesium. And I don't know, probably 80% of the population probably are serially dehydrated, mainly because they poisoned the tap water, so you don't want to drink that. and bottled water isn't that much safer, and bottled water is expensive. I mean, I'm incredibly lucky. When I moved here, I went on a website called findaspring.com, and it cost a bit of money, so I had to invest in some big, water containers. But now, once a week or something, I'll go up to the spring, and Find a Spring told me there was one 10 minutes away, and so I get my water for free, except for a bit of petrol to get there and back, and the original cost of the bottles. But if go on to findaspring.com, see if there's anywhere near you, because that's the best water out. I mean, the theory, as I see it, is if water is ripe, it will come to the surface of its own volition. You know, most springs defy gravity. I've seen them come up at the top of the mountains in India, right at the, how on earth did that get there? There's no lake above or any particular water source. It's because it's basically under pressure. And I would suggest that spring water, assuming it's from a decent source, is ripe.
Yeah. I'll be straight on that website after the show. And as you say, you're not taught in school about the benefits of magnesium or any of these compounds that you advocate for. And you're a proper magnesium evangelist. You would say that it's the cure to lots of ailments and conditions, right?
Well, imagine you were a kid at school. Let's say you're, I don't know, 14 or 15 or something. And I said to you, look, what if you went home today and you asked all your family, grandma, granddad, whoever it is, have you got any pain? Have you got arthritis, for example? Do you get headaches? Whatever it might be. Let's say they say, well, yes, Granny has got arthritis. Well, you could say, look, I've just learned at school that what arthritis is, essentially, rheumatoid arthritis anyway, is a buildup of calcium on the joints. So if you get a buildup of calcium on your joints, now your joints look a bit ugly and swollen, and they get inflamed, which leads to pain and so on. So how difficult would it be to explain to a child, well, how do you dissolve those calcium deposits? There must be a way. And obviously you can get calcium deposits in the pineal gland, you get it in the arteries of the heart and so on. So calcium deposits are a bit of a problem. So how do you deal with that? Well, magnesium dissolves calcium. Right? That's one of the things that it does. They used to say, when I was young, the textbooks would say, well, magnesium is known to have 300 effects in the body. Now that's old news. People still think that's true, but they now reckon it's well over 3,000 effects of magnesium in the body that make your body work properly in 3,000 different ways. It's so important and relatively inexpensive. I mean, if anybody's tried parking your car at the hospital recently, the car park is a lot of money. I mean, it's the system out there is terrible. In the old days, many doctors were taught natural medicine. 180 years ago or something, when iodine was first discovered and used for medical purposes, it was taught to doctors. Every doctor knew about iodine. Then, when they realized that it was way too cheap and it couldn't be patented and there was no profit in it, they stopped teaching it to doctors. You'd think that doctors would be taught nutrition, that they'd be taught cures, that they'd be taught what minerals and vitamins and essential fats and amino acids do. But basically, unless they specialize in some area, they're not. The emergency room doctors are fantastic because their job is to save your life. They know all the tricks. If somebody has got comes into the emergency room with a heart attack, they know exactly what to do. There are water-soluble versions of magnesium, like Epsom salts, magnesium sulfate, and they can inject it and stop a heart attack in seconds, because when a heart beats, you've got calcium causing the contraction and magnesium, which is the mineral of relaxation, causing the expansion of the heart. So if you run out of magnesium, let's say you're stressed, you've been worried about stuff, you can get a heart attack. So to release that calcium-caused contraction, you need magnesium to do it, and it can work in seconds.
And magnesium is also useful for promoting natural sleep, right?
Well, for some people, it's just brilliant. That was why they're not sleeping properly, because they can't relax. Maybe their brain's racing. Maybe they wake up at 3 a.m. worrying, whatever it is. And of course, worry is another part of the issue, because worry is self-destructive and absolutely selfish. Worry doesn't get you anywhere. Having intelligent concern, being not in the fear state where you worry, but being in the love state where you know that everything happens for a reason, you are essentially being looked after one way or another. Um, yeah, I mean, we create our own reality to a large degree. If you believe it's going to go wrong, probably will. If you believe it's going to go right, and your aims are good and honest, I think the universe picks up on what you think and what you believe.
Sure. And if you're someone who happens to enjoy a drink or two in the evenings to relax, is that going to dissipate the effects of the magnesium at all? Asking for a friend?
um, Actually, I don't know about alcohol and magnesium, but if in doubt, take more. The body's self-regulating, so if you accidentally take too much, you'll know about it because you'll be in the bathroom because the bowels will have relaxed so much that they'll sort of let go. But just like vitamin C, your body can self-regulate both those things. Um, but it's possible to overdose on anything you like, but at least with those two, you really can't.
No,
Because
I just wondered if you enjoy a beer or two of an evening before you go to bed, if it's going to negate the effects of the magnesium in when you have a
well,
restful
as I
night.
say, I don't know the answer to that one, but let's just assume it did. On the nights where you have a drink, you could always try taking a couple more. You don't want to take too many at once. But I mean, the thing is that if you're going to drink, to counteract it, I would want to take the B vitamins. I'd want to take fulvic minerals. I'd want to take selenium, possibly amino acids if you weren't eating enough meat. Um, Vitamin C, uh, those would be pretty key to making sure you didn't get a hangover, along with drinking the right, drinking good water. And if you're in doubt about the water, if you put a pinch of vitamin C in the water, let's say you haven't filtered it, comes straight out of the tap, there's chlorine in it. Vitamin C will neutralize chlorine. Um, if there's fluoride in the water, a tiny pinch of borax will neutralize that. If it's in the bath, you do the same thing, but just a teaspoon or two of vitamin C or borax in the bath, that'll neutralize chlorine and fluoride. Um, but people don't realize how dangerous chlorine, for example, is. When you have a bath, you just think the water's on the outside, but as in a hot bath or a hot shower, your pores are opening up, and the chlorine in the water and in the gas, because if you smell chlorine, that's a poison gas, is going right in. I made a video a couple of years back where I got 3 glasses of regular tap water, and in the first glass, I put a few drops of chlorine indicator drops, which you'd use for a swimming pool, and immediately the water went green, showing the presence of chlorine. The next glass, I put my fingers in for 5 seconds and pulled them out, put the chlorine indicator drops. The chlorine had vanished, presumably, into my fingers. Third glass, this time just for 3 seconds, I put a slice of raw potato in, pulled it out. Chlorine indicator drops, no chlorine indicated. And I can only assume that that went into the potato. So if you're boiling your potatoes in chlorine or cooking anything in chlorinated water, what's really happening? Chlorine killed millions of people in World War One in concentration. It's deadly. Do we think that a poison gas is all right just because we can smell it, but it's not harming us? We can drink it, but it's not, it's super dangerous stuff.
Makes you think. And it makes me wonder about people that go swimming every day in swimming pools.
They need to understand that they should be taking iodine. My favorite version is called Lugol's iodine, and a year's supply is 25 quid. So it's, years. If you're going swimming, won't last that long, but I'd be taking a few drops of iodine in water before I went in the pool and a few drops afterwards. And if anybody joins the Secret Health Club, there are lots of videos about iodine and how to use it properly. Now, let me just say that when I got banned by the government in 2014, they made me take all my YouTube videos down and stuff. I started a private association, a private members club called secrethealthclub.com, so I could put up the information that the government didn't want me to share. And initially it was free, then because I had to get some staff to run it, it cost money. But because I believe that basically information should be free, if you want to join the Secret Health Club, but you can't afford it, it's about, I think, £80 a year or something. If you can't afford it, just send me an email, info@clivedecarle.com, say what you can afford. And if you can afford nothing, then just say, and we'll sign you up for free. But it is a super useful bit of research tool. You know, you look up what your problem is or what supplement you want to research. And there's a reasonable chance in the A to Z or in the search what you're looking for will pop up. You know, it's how to make your own medicines at a cheap price, along with you know, everything I've learned, you know, that I think is important, most of it anyway, in an A to Z form. And you know, I really advise joining it and share it with your family. Do whatever you need to do. Yeah, the money's just to keep it running. It's not to make money, so to speak. Um, but you know, these days, you know, I used to do consultations a lot, but now I prefer to give talks and do radio stuff because more people can get the info. But it's all about self-empowerment. You know, medicine, the profession of being a doctor, is massively complicated. You've got to memorize stuff and learn stuff without really knowing the proof of it. You just got to believe it from the professors who learned it 20 years before or whatever. 5 years, and then you're only just beginning. You start a practice. Practice isn't really a good word for a professional to be doing still after 5 years. But health is easy. I mean, you know, basically, I've narrowed it down to about 10 basic things, most of which we've discussed already. You know, vitamin C, vitamin D, magnesium, fulvic minerals, iodine, selenium. Yeah, those are absolutely key. You know, pretty much everybody who's feeling weak, you know, they got fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue or whatever they want to call it this month. They're going to be low on probably on vitamin C, vitamin D, magnesium, and selenium. People who've got a thyroid issue, maybe they've got menopausal issues, hot flushes, brain fog, dry skin, any of that sort of thing, that's iodine and selenium deficiency. If they've got skin problems, it's probably a MSM sulfur and selenium deficiency. Um, if they've got heart issues, it's probably vitamin C, magnesium, CoQ10. You know, it's actually, it may sound complicated what I just said, but actually, the, it's been known for decades how to fix bipolar, manic depression. It's been known for decades how to fix schizophrenia. You know, if you look at it simply as if it's not physical damage, you've been hit by a truck or something, if it's toxicity, and we're all toxically poisoned, mentally, physically, if it, you know, toxicity and nutrient deficiency, because food isn't what it was, it's so obvious that if we can somehow find a way to get the toxins out and the nutrition in, why can't our bodies self-repair as they're designed to? Doctors are taught your body goes wrong, we'll fix it for you, or we won't fix it, we won't cure anything, but we'll give you a treatment that'll make your pain more bearable, your suffering longer. Um, Whereas we're self-repairing. You know, in almost every case, something's wrong with somebody. Well, it's the answer is going to be toxicity or nutrient deficiency, or most likely of all, both. I mean, it's not difficult. And I've seen people who the doctors have been working on for 20 years who they just missed a bit of natural information. You know, it's sad that it could all this natural stuff could easily be taught at school as a subject. You know, not even that probably wouldn't even have to do every week necessarily, but it'd be great if kids were taught how to fix granny because the doctors don't know generally.
It sure would. And you whittled down your core range of products a few months ago, I guess, as you mentioned just there. How did you decide which products to cut out? Because you've got it down to the core essentials, but you let a few go.
Well, I mean, what it's about is, from that perspective, the answer is really, well, everybody, and the trick is to follow the instructions and go for it. Don't pussyfoot around. If it says take two, take two. Don't take one. If it says take four, take four. Don't take one. You know, most people are super scared of overdosing. Now, with a drug, well, quite right. You can easily overdose. Even the standard dose is probably too much in many cases, but nobody's ever died of a vitamin. Yes, you could get diarrhea if you take too much vitamin C or with minerals too much magnesium, but Vitamins are hugely safe. Minerals, a bit like water, you can drown in water, and minerals you can overdose. But I mean, let me give you a story I absolutely love. There's this suicidal teenage girl, and she decided she was going to end it all. So she goes to her mother's medicine cabinet and looks through everything to find the most poisonous things. She finds something called niacinamide, which she then swallows the entire bottle, wakes up the next morning to her surprise, only to find she's happy. Niacinamide is the non-flush version of niacin, vitamin B3, and having swallowed an entire bottle, her depression went away.
Great story.
There are several other stories about niacin which are incredible. Um, a lot of people who know about Alcoholics Anonymous will recognize the name of Bill W., who was really the main founder. His organization chucked him out eventually, and the reason they chucked him out was he discovered niacin, and he went to a fantastic medical psychiatrist called Dr. Abraham Hoffer, who wrote the book Niacin, the Real Story, which is worth reading. Anyway, he cured Bill W.'s depression. The reason he was an alcoholic, conceivably, one of them was the fact he was deeply depressed. In about 10 days, with a quite large dose of vitamin B3, he was fixed and wanted to make it the 13th step. But his colleagues at AA didn't believe in vitamins, so they sacked him. Um, but there have been so many stories over the years of people who've been mired in depression and they didn't realize it was a vitamin deficiency. The B vitamins are about energy and happiness. B3, particularly B6, also B12. Um, then there are other things that the B vitamins do. I mean, we've probably all met somebody who's had anorexia. I knew a guy once who had anorexia, and one day he was around at somebody's house when, at the end of the hallway, he sees a full length. He sees somebody who looks like he's about to die. He sees this skeleton, runs towards him, about to say, "Look, you need to eat something. You're dying," and realized it was a full length mirror. He saw himself, and that was the end of his anorexia. But anorexics are basically low on vitamin B1, right? That's it. They're low on vitamin B1. If you take a B vitamin, you want to take the blend of all of them for balance. But doctors aren't taught this. They're not taught that neuropathy, which is tingling in your hands and feet, maybe numbness of your hands and feet. A lot of diabetics get that, and they end up, having terrible feet and hand problems. When I was pronounced diabetic in the hospital 40 years ago, they said, "Well, you do realize we will be cutting your feet off later in life." Total bollocks. That's what they didn't know about vitamin B1. I mean, it's just insane. And how much does it cost? Well, it's not very much.
Mm.
And I could go on because it's just one simple solution, and it's all basically down to nutrition. Because things like vitamin C, yeah, you can get nutrition from that, but also vitamin C is a great detoxifier. So it does two roles. Sulfur, which you get from things like broccoli, eggs, liver, garlic, onions. Sulfur is a magic material because what it does is it makes insoluble substances like lead or mercury or aluminium or some sort of poison. It Sulfur, when it sulfates things, it has the chemical reaction of taking mercury and converting into mercury sulfate. Now, for the first time, possibly since you had a silver filling when you were young, for the first time you can get rid of that mercury. And that's what MSM does. It sulfates things. And so while it's great for skin, hair, nails, it's incredible for the whole body. It is a fantastic detoxifier at the same time. Fulvic minerals, soil-based mineral complex that has all the trace elements that you don't get in a multivitamin generally, multi-mineral generally. You don't get in food because the soil's been destroyed. So fulvic minerals not only carry all the tiny trace elements that we and the bacteria that make us up as well want to eat for breakfast, but also it detoxifies at the same time. Some people say that fulvic minerals are perhaps the best detoxifier and the best cell hydration method that you could possibly employ. All these ones I mentioned, apart from the sulfur, which we sell separately, it's called MSM sulfur. Um, are in the pack. And I recommend that if you can afford it, it's about £170 for the 10 supplements, which isn't that bad. If you can't afford it, rather than do the whole lot in 30 days, share it with somebody else and do your half in 14 days. Don't spread it out. The idea is to give the body as quickly as you can the nutrients that you need. And there's very little, if you like, that can go wrong. And I would say at least 80% will notice the difference. You often on day one, depends what the problems are. If it's magnesium related, generally pretty much right away they feel different. With some of the other things, it can take longer. But again, they all sort of work synergistically together.
Have you come across any indication that using big pharma drugs shuts down spiritual capacity? Because I remember there was some talk of certain of the convid arm spears being used to cut people off from the higher sort of divine aspect of themselves. People were saying, oh, I've been cut off from God, and comments like this. Do you think regular big pharma drugs that people take routinely and are administered by their doctors do the same? And can shite food have the same effect?
Well, I think everybody knows the answer to this. Yes. I mean, it has to. We're meant to be taking in natural substances and be in a state of relaxation where, let's say, in the daytime, we're outdoors a lot getting sunshine. At nighttime, we're getting infrared, just like we were in the daytime from the sun, but by sitting around the fire. People spend money on infrared devices, realizing they could just light a wood fire or even a coal fire and get infrared that way, like our ancestors used to do. And then when they sat around the fire, they were inhaling charcoal dust, right? And charcoal is an incredibly important mineral substance. And, it's one of the things that's not in the pack, but we sell it on the website. And if somebody came around to my house after they've eaten out and they've got a really bad stomach, I'll give them maybe 4 or 5 charcoal capsules. And often within 10, 15 minutes, they've just completely forgotten they had a problem. But it's important to understand, like pretty much everything, it's about the quality. If you take activated charcoal, that's made with a chemical process using acids. And in the emergency room, that's what they use. And that's what I'd advise in an emergency. But the problem with activated charcoal is that it doesn't only drag out the poisons, it drags out the good stuff as well, the water soluble vitamins, for example. So we do what our ancestors used to do, which is non-activated charcoal. It's only a quarter of as powerful, but you could take that every day if you had to, for some reason, get rid of poisoning. But as a natural substance to clean up the toxins, charcoal can be a very useful substance as well as giving you minerals. I mean, you've probably heard about the pregnant women who, some will crave pickled onions because their body knows that's what they need. Some will actually eat coal because they're so minerally deficient, they're eating coal. Same as people who chew their fingernails. That's a sign of mineral deficiency. The body's gone, you're going to have to recycle the minerals. You've got so little. Bite your fingernails, get some minerals back.
Hmm. And how do you source your products? Because I'm guessing you're not in a laboratory cooking it all up yourself. So where do you get them all from?
Well, I used to do it that way. Now we've got a couple of labs. We've got one that's got encapsulation machines and, all the temperature control gear that you need and so on. And then we've got another which does uh, well, we've got two halves to that manufacturing process. And when I first started, we got hit by every regulatory body you could imagine. I mean, it was one after another, but everything was fine. And now, just a few weeks ago, Health and Stupidity came in to check that everything was fine, which I was super pleased about. But we have to keep massive records, and you got to be able to trace back every component you've got. But my philosophy is just simple: go for the best you can. And yes, the best might be more expensive in some cases, not necessarily, but it might be. But with health, if you can afford it, you want the best you can possibly get. And some of the supermarket type vitamins, minerals, frankly, some of them are doing way more harm than good. People will take one multivitamin, multivitamin, multi-mineral and think, well, that is better than nothing. Not always.
So I mentioned smoking and tobacco briefly earlier. What is the deal with vaping? Because vaping is everywhere now. Is it really any safer than smoking cigarettes? Does its seemingly benign nature disguise what may be going on there? What is the reason for vaping having become so prevalent in society, by design, deliberately, in your view?
Yeah, well, I would guess it's a trap. Um, I mean, obviously, smoking isn't necessarily a good idea. If you need nicotine because you want to get the benefits of nicotine, you can use a patch. The benefits of nicotine are worth studying. It's a very controversial area, clearly, but a lot of people who've had the arm spear found that a nicotine patch made them feel much better from day one onwards. Not necessarily you've got to do it forever, but I mean, if you think about the South American tribes down there, many of them used tobacco as their purification ceremony before they did the ayahuasca or whatever else they were going to do. Tobacco has in the past been revered for um, everything from relieving anxiety and stress to, um, in some cases, seemingly reversing various health issues. I mean, take for instance, um, we mentioned niacinamide, and another. There are various names that different versions of niacin go under. One of them is nicotinic acid. So you think about nicotine, nicotinic acid, and B3 making people happier. You know, there's a lot of historical reasons why people found it a useful thing. So, again, it's something people need to research themselves. Because the problem is that nowadays there's so much information on the internet or on AI that it's getting increasingly hard to tell the difference. I got caught out a few months ago when I put up a video that I believed was true. I knew it was AI generated, but I just believed the facts, and I got caught out. I put it on my Telegram channel. Those people wrote to me saying you're wrong, and I was. I had to eat humble pie, but the, the super interesting thing is what some of this AI stuff is leading to. Let me give you an example. Have you heard of Ibrahim Traore, the leader of Burkina Faso?
No, don't know.
Okay, so everybody needs to look up the name Ibrahim Traore, Traore. Now, I don't like military coups, obviously, but he took over by military coup about 3.5 years ago when he was, I think, 33 years old, something like that. And the first thing he did was to chuck out the corporations, the people who'd been stealing the gold and everything like that, chucked out the French army, who, even though they'd, so to speak, got independence, hadn't really. And so he's become a hero in Africa, particularly amongst the young people. So Mali, Niger, and other countries are following suit. They've teamed up as something called the AES, which is basically the association of Sahel states. That region of Central Africa is that Sahel, just in the Sahara and just below the Sahara. And so what happened was that not only did I get fooled by some of these videos about the man, because as far as I can tell, he's a genuinely good guy doing great things. But I saw this video which said that he'd invited the heads of the World Bank to his office and told them he discovered the trail of corruption, how much money they'd stolen, and they had 24 hours to give the money back or they'd end up in prison. So, according to this AI generated video, they ended up in prison. But of course, unfortunately, it was made up. At least, can I be sure it was made up? Or, you don't know anything anymore of really what's true. But everybody needs to look at Ibrahim Traore because millions of young Africans, I imagine, were fooled just like I was, that actually this guy is doing all sorts of wonderful things that maybe he's not doing, but it's implanted the idea in the young of Africa that their whole leadership could switch from being colonialist, imperialist, back to running their own show.
Yeah. Well, if he is really doing all these great things, he probably needs to check his brakes every time he goes out and perhaps
Oh,
don't
yeah.
take baths.
Well, he's been there are assassination attempts, I would imagine, on a daily basis because he is enemy number one for, the powers that think they are.
Yeah.
But at least it's a counterpoint to what's going on in the Middle East, that there is huge hope. And of course, Africa, in terms of mineral resources and so on, is the richest country on the planet. So, the potential, I mean, all Africans, I think, are aware now that their leaders have been corrupt. They can hardly pretend they weren't. And what benefit have they ever got from the diamonds, the gold, the petrol, whatever it is, cobalt?
And Band-Aid and Live Aid.
Yeah, supposedly none of the money reached anybody. I mean, it's just, anyway, I'm hugely optimistic that, I don't know how long it's going to take, but at least Africa are going to wake up and hopefully be an example to everybody else.
Yeah. And that must be a nation that presumably doesn't have a Rothschild-controlled central bank then, because there's very few of those in the world and aren't answerable to the United Nations and World Bank and WHO and all of these.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, because they're so wealthy, even if they've got massive debts with all the gold that they've suddenly, so to speak, repatriated, they're not going to have a problem. If they wanted to borrow money from private sources, for instance, or print it themselves, they could follow the example that Britain did in 1914 by introducing the Bradbury. You know about the Bradbury Pound?
Yeah, I've heard about it. Yeah.
Do you want me to explain it very briefly?
Yeah, go ahead.
So when World War One was coming, the banks, the government were incredibly worried that there'd be a run on the banks, that everybody would want to cash their notes in and get their gold back, which obviously didn't exist because they'd lent way more money, fiat currency, than they had in gold. So they wondered what to do, and they decided they'd call a bank holiday before there was a rush to get the gold back. And in those few days, they cut out the Bank of England completely. So England, for a while, did not have a central bank. They printed money just like they print the coins, mint the coins, right? There's no interest on the coins they mint because that's the treasury. It's the government doing the creation of the money. But it had been, of course, and is now, that the central bank creates the money, which is then lent out at interest, and there's no gold to back it. It's all fiction. So they decided that what they'd do is they create a new currency, and the head of the treasury or whoever it was known as John Bradbury. So when the new currency came out, the new notes came out, they his signature on them was, I promised to pay or whatever, John Bradbury. So they're called the Bradbury Pound. And the big worry was, would the people accept this new money? And I don't fully understand how they got away with it, but they did. On the first day, when they brought back the new money, they were only printed on one side, the notes, because they didn't have time to print both sides. On the second day, the notes came printed on both sides. And as there was no interest attached to this money creation, how did they do it? How they did it was looking at England Limited. You know, it's full of property, it's full of land, it's full of industry, it's full of hardworking people. England, or the UK, is worth fortunes, trillions and trillions. It's a safe bet. You could lend money against the value of the UK, right? We've got forests growing, we've got all this stuff. And that's what they did. That's how they justified it. We'll be refinancing the economy. And the unfortunate part is, of course, they created the money to fund World War One. But the Rothschilds soon sorted that, and obviously the Bank of England were able to step back in after a while. But because it's been done before, it could be done again. This afternoon, Parliament could bring back the principle of the Bradbury Pound and start printing money themselves at no interest, and the entire economy could be fixed overnight, and nobody knows because it's a bit of history that's covered up.
Yep. One of so many. And it's amazing that we're now rediscovering all this stuff. And it's all coming at once if you're paying attention. All these things that
Yeah.
have been suppressed and kept from us.
Yeah, I mean, the depressed people out there, if you're depressed listening to this may be obvious, but it may be that what you're doing is watching negative stuff. If you spend all your time looking for solutions, don't wade mud deep in the problems. You know what the problems are already. You don't need to see people being bombed to shit to know what the problems are. What are the solutions? I mean, I think everybody knows about the Naval Flotilla with Greta, whoever she is, on board. But do people know about the land flotilla that's coming from Morocco, from Algeria, from Tunisia? And the last I heard, I haven't caught up with it recently, but they were in about to enter Egypt, who had the choice of are they on Israel's side or are they on the side of all the other uh, nations, from the Western Sahara and so on. So I haven't kept up with it. I don't know what's happening, but tens of thousands of people are arriving physically as people. They've got a 50-mile or 50-kilometer walk across the desert to get to Palestine or Israel, wherever they're heading to exactly. I'm not sure, but it is when it gets personal. You know, uh, an example I like to quote is the truck drivers in Canada. They clogged up a city centre as their protest. If they'd parked individually outside the houses of all the bad guys, it would have been very different.
I totally agree about the podcasts, the doom and gloom stuff. If you spend all day looking at that stuff, it can really put you in a bad negative state. I speak from experience there, and I know people who watch too many of these things, and they've become the new way of people entertaining themselves and passing time, I guess. Because if you decide you don't want to watch TV anymore or the mainstream media, then you can very easily gravitate towards all this stuff on YouTube and elsewhere. And a lot of it is just so negative, just pointing out all the problems and all the fucked up stuff in the world. And without effective solutions, it can just put people in a really bad place.
There's a page on the Secret Health Club that I've been putting together for years, which is called Solutions to the World. And there are various videos showing how to regrow a desert, how to solve most problems because our ancestors had most of them solved in the past anyway. And since shit began to happen, which has been virtually forever, so many intelligent people have come up with answers. Most of the answers to starvation and so on, decades ago, it was obvious what the answers were. And the first answer I heard was, did I realize that the American military budget alone for 1 year would solve poverty, would solve starvation worldwide? You know, I mean, uh, again, for 20 odd years, I've been saying, look, why don't we, the people, pay all the soldiers and everybody who's armed, uh, double not to do it? Could we stop war if the word got out that, look, all you got to do is come home, help your family, help anybody who needs help, and we'll pay you more than you get for killing people and risking your life.
What a great thought. Great idea.
I mean, along with that is you send every public servant a very tiny dictionary which has the definition of two words. The words are public and servant. So public means us. You don't serve the government, you serve us. And servant means you do nice things for us. If you're a parking warden, you help us park. If you're a planning person, you help, as opposed to the opposite. I mean, how difficult would it be? We've got millions of public servants, all of them serving the wrong master.
Right. Yeah.
It's not that the system has to change in that Parliament is a perfectly good debating chamber like anywhere else. It's just that psychopaths shouldn't be allowed to run corporations and psychopaths shouldn't be allowed to run governments or councils or the police or anybody else.
And regrettably, they're the very ones that do rise to these positions of influence and power. They're specially selected for it.
Yeah. Two things rise to the top, in cooking. Cream rises to the top of milk and scum rises to the top of, broth. And it's the scum who take over when it should be the cream.
There you go. Good analogy. What's the question you get asked more than any other, or the subject area that people most want to hear you speak about? Because you've been doing this for quite a few years.
How do I get my health back on a general basis? And then probably followed by, I'm in pain. I can't walk properly. They say I need a new hip or whatever it might be.
So it's a wide variety of problems that people want you to address.
Yeah, it's everything. But I mean, what's at the root? We've covered, vitamins and minerals. We haven't really talked about essential fats or amino acids, but let's say we had. What's next on the list? Well, number one's got to be trauma. Got to be trauma. Everybody is traumatized. If you watched a screen yesterday, you're probably traumatized to some degree by what's going on in the Middle East or whatever it is. We're traumatized to hell with electromagnetic frequencies, you name it. And So where I've seen the biggest benefits recently have been with trauma release. I don't know whether you've tried our magic chairs, have you?
I had
Which,
a go, yeah, last year. It sounds beautiful. You were
yeah,
trying them out
exactly.
there, so I had a go. It was
I thought you
amazing.
had.
Yeah, couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the results I've seen have been just close to unbelievable. I mean, for instance, we had one woman arrive on a mobility scooter, and she had somebody with her who could understand what she was saying, because none of us could understand more or less a word of what she was saying. And it was incredibly difficult for her to get out of her mobility scooter to walk 3 or 4 steps to lie down on this chair. So, um, what happened with her was that um, I treated her also with the Tesla device because she was in a lot of pain. And when she came off the chair, I had to hug her for about 15 minutes as she cried and cried and cried. And she explained to me that her daughter had died 14 years earlier. And 1 year later, she'd got motor neuron disease and had been deteriorating. The doctors, of course, given her the hypnosis, you'll never get better. You know, that's it for you. Anyway, um, 10 minutes on the chair, and as I witnessed, I had to hug her. She let go of the trauma. Bam. And I'd never seen anything like, I'd never seen a trauma release. You know, she was virtually screaming at some points. It was this hysteria. Anyway, crazy. Anyway, she gets up and walks. And now I can understand maybe 8 words out of 10 that she's speaking. She let go of the trauma. And I think what had happened in her body mind was that she'd thought herself as a failure. You know, her daughter had died. She must have her part to play in the blame game. And I think she thought herself as worthless, useless, whatever you'd think if your daughter's died. And I think her body picked up on those thoughts and became useless and worthless. And when she shed the trauma, she got better right away. And I've had the same thing with a lady with multiple sclerosis, also arrived on a mobility scooter. She had a trauma release, but she didn't need to tell anybody about it. She got off the chair after 10 minutes. And we were in a Barbara O'Neill conference. There were, I don't know, 100 people in that room or more. And she starts shouting, I can walk, I can walk. And it was just ludicrous. And I don't know what her problem was, but when she came, she was the meekest woman you could ever meet. She was apologizing for who she was. You know, it was really a bit sad. And suddenly she transformed into somebody really outgoing. It was quite funny. But you know how it is in the wild. You've probably seen those David Attenborough films, Nasty Guy, where the animal escapes, you know, the gazelle escapes the lion, and what they do is they shake all the adrenaline out. They physically shake themselves and then wander off because they've taken themselves from sympathetic dominant to parasympathetic, from fight and flight to health and recovery. And so this the chair, basically, as you experienced, sort of does that, but you don't have to be chased by a lion to experience it, luckily. And it's incredible. Um, I've had maybe, I don't know, 10 people say, not for me, but you can almost guarantee that anybody getting off the chair will say the same word, which is wow. Pretty much everybody. It's really funny. I can predict, you know, when there's a queue of people waiting, because it sounds beautiful. So I think we had 6 chairs there, and most of the time there were queues of several people. And I say to them, this person's coming off now in a few seconds. You listen, he's going to go, wow. They come off and go, wow. But it's been incredible. I mean, because we're all traumatized, depending on how you've dealt with the trauma over your life, you may be more or less affected by what the chair can offer. But they've been using it in really dramatic trauma situations where the, you know, children out of war zones and the ambulance drivers taking them out and so on. Massive trauma in instances like that, and massive relief very quickly. Generally, with deep trauma like that, we'd run a 35-minute program rather than just the 10 minutes. But firefighters are using them, particularly in America. You know, if they've been in some burning building, sports people are using them because they can get in the zone prior to a match or something, and then afterwards they can totally relax, and all the muscles will relax, and they won't ache the way they would have done normally. there are meditation programs, so you can do hour or longer meditations. I've had people who've just done the 10-minute one who said, I've been meditating for 20 years and haven't been that deep. As you probably remember, what happens is it sort of, you feel as if you're floating and then you drop into like a space of nothingness. I don't know whether that describes it for you, but I've used it lots of times, so I know where I'm going with it. What did you find?
I just remember every time it stopped shaking, I wanted it to start again. I wanted it as intense as possible because I just
Ah,
felt such an incredible experience from it. So when it did drop, I recognized it was part of the process, but I was just counting the seconds until it would crank itself up again.
interesting. So, yeah, it's funny because a lot of people like it one way or both ways or one or the other. For me, I like the drop. I like it when it stops because I can find a place within myself of utter peace, utter rest, where nothing sort of matters. And what you experienced is with the blindfold and headphones. But
Yeah.
once you know how the machine basically works now, because the breathing is a very important part of it, you can just listen to music and experience it. You put it on an hour-long meditation program, chill out. You don't have to be blindfolded or be guided. At the beginning, the guidance is necessary because you need to know how each program sort of basically works. But it's just a fascinating piece of kit, and every community needs one. Just like, I mean, this is wishful thinking, every prison needs one. How traumatized are the people in prison? How traumatized are they because of it? How traumatized were they to get themselves in that position anyway? And I think you could reduce the level of violence dramatically if they were put into prisons, but I don't see it happening, with the current ruling people.
Yeah, trauma is definitely the key to so much, and I talk about this in my presentations as well. Alistair MacLean wrote a book called Fear is the Key, but he should probably have called it Trauma is the Key because trauma is used in mind control, MK Ultra style, to literally control people's minds and behaviors. And it's done societally as well. We're all traumatized by the way organized society has been set up. As you said, I don't think there's anyone that's escaped that. There's no one that's
No.
outside of some form of trauma. So it's
And,
everywhere.
I was highly traumatized on the first day I went to primary school or kindergarten for
Yeah,
getting me out of this horrible fucking place, this horrible woman.
exactly.
Um,
That would do it.
so yeah, I think trauma starts young. And for a lot of people, I believe it starts in the womb, where mum, for instance, has some terrible experience, whatever that might be. And then child grows up not knowing why they react in a certain way when a certain circumstance happens. But I think it's because they experienced it in the womb and they picked up on their mother's adrenaline or whatever it was.
Mm.
And at a subconscious level are recognizing that terrible thing that happened, even if they can't quite put their finger on why they're so reactive or whatever. But the amazing thing is with a lot of different types of trauma, you only need to get rid of it the once. I'm sure that's not the same with every trauma, but I first discovered this when I used to do hypnosis as my thing 30 odd years ago, whenever it was. And uh, I found when I learned how to do it properly, if I got somebody out of a trauma, uh, they were out. It wasn't like a psychotherapist where you got to go back every week and go over it again and again and again. And like the woman I mentioned with the motor neuron disease, once she got rid of that trauma, she just got better and better. So I think trauma is way more important than I ever thought it was.
Mm. You don't really want to be reliving it, do you? Week after
No,
week,
no, I
session
think
after session.
psychotherapy is where they force you to relive it. I mean, Freud, one of the reasons he got famous was he said, look, if you come once a year, you'll be better. If you come every month, you'll be better still. If you come every week, you'll be even better. And that meant you didn't need to find new clients. You just got them over and over again, went through the whole fucking thing every time.
Made a lot of money as well.
And the practitioners loved it because, again, they didn't have to go and seek new clients all the time. I want to see somebody once or give them advice once, and that's it. They're fixed. I don't want to come back again.
Yeah. So, what events can we find you at this summer? I think you're back at Sounds Beautiful, are you? And you're doing the Shine seminars in August. Are there any other festival type events people could find you at?
Yeah, this Sunday coming, I am at Crops Not Shops. I'm speaking just after lunch, I think 2 o'clock or something like that. Crops Not Shops is sort of near
That's
Glasgow.
Eli's event, right?
Yeah, it's a good site. Then the following week, I'm doing Sounds Beautiful again, and I think that's at
That's
Gaunt's
Gaunt's
house. I
Estate,
think.
Wimborne.
Yeah, Gaunt's house,
Yeah.
Wimborne, Dorset.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'm going to do a few more throughout the year. I'm going to do a couple of things with Barbara O'Neill, who's, if nobody's heard of Barbara O'Neill, you want to discover Barbara O'Neill, got banned by the Australian government. Was told you can never work again. You can't do anything to do with health ever again. And so she had to leave the country. She'd been running a clinic for 40 years or something. Um, so yeah, a few things. On my websites, you'll find it. And I've got two of those. One is clivedecarle.com, which is the supplement website where we can tell you almost nothing because that would be illegal. Then there's secrethealthclub.com. There's a section called Supplements Revealed, which is what we would put on the website if we could. I mean, it's just so stupid.
And I hear you got banned by Glastonbury Council, yourself and those fellow terrorists, Richard Vobes and Sandy Adams, for your spewing your hate speech. You know,
Yes.
you've been
And
banned from.
after we got banned from the town hall, where I've been giving talks for 20 years plus, I used to give talks every month in Glastonbury for a couple of years. It's not like I'm not known or never spoken there, never caused any riots, not yet. Anyway, so we were casting around for another venue that's big enough, and we found St. John's Church, and they banned us as well. So now we've got a new venue, and which I think will be all right. But it's incredible how the authorities just don't want you to know how to be healthy or free. I mean, it's not
Well,
incredible
you're
at all.
just so far right, Clive. That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh well. And we've had an AI transcript running on this conversation where if people want to get it in written form, I guess that can be made available. So we did this last time and it's using AI for some beneficial means because obviously it's been weaponized against us, but we can still use it ourselves for, constructive things.
Yeah. I mean, be wary of the transcript, as has been said in the past. Beware of what you read in health books because you might get killed by a misprint. That was Mark Twain. And so be careful with transcripts because obviously they might change one word for another one that looks really, really similar, but in actual fact it's a totally different word. So just because it says 2 grams, maybe check on the label or, don't be wary of that. But I've been using the paid for version of ChatGPT. Oh my God. I set it up right to start that I never want anything from Wikipedia. I don't want anything from Pfizer or Bayer or the drug companies. I set the parameters of what I wanted in future. And whereas it used to take maybe 3 months for us to come up with a new formula and prove that the formula was right before we tested it on people, now I'd say it's cut it down from 3 months to 3 days. It's got incredible if you know how to ask the right question. I mean, uh, last week, one of the questions I asked, right, I want you to search through all the Japanese language health reports and tell me what they say about XYZ. And so I've got it set to deep research, so it takes a couple of minutes rather than a couple of seconds. I'd got translated the latest results on what I wanted from Japanese research. And, the Germans are good, the Swiss are good, the Japanese are incredible. And so it gives you the opportunity. I mean, a friend of mine a few years ago pointed out that you could say to AI, right, I want you to look at every health journal that's ever been printed, every paper from PubMed or wherever it is, and I want you to look for these keywords like cure and whatever disease you can think of. It could, in theory, search every document that's ever been written and spit out the salient points. And, now AI is like Google was when it first came out. You can find out anything, and it's all about asking the right questions. So I'm using AI a lot. You've got to double check it because it makes mistakes. I asked ChatGPT which other AIs are better than you, and it listed all the main other ones. Like this one's good for videos, this one's good for this, that, and then it said the one that it didn't rate, or the one it rated the least, was Google Gemini. And as it put it, it hallucinates more than the rest of us, in brackets, makes things up.
Right.
It didn't say that ChatGPT didn't, it just said Gemini did it more.
Okay. We'll bear that in mind. So, all the products we've mentioned in the show today are available through your website and the 30-day rejuvenation pack. And I've got an affiliate link. If anyone listening is interested in getting their hands on any of this stuff, going through my link is a great way of helping both of us out. And it allows us to continue what we do respectively and just continue our work.
So
Okay. Yep, sure.
in the
So,
blurb below, or maybe we'll stick it up on the screen now, that kind of thing, do buy it through Mark's affiliate link because he's doing such incredible work, and he hasn't got a supplement company to keep him running, if you see what I mean. So yeah, use his
right.
affiliate link, and please share this information with anybody you think might find it useful.
Sure. If you're going to get the stuff anyway, going through my link just helps me out a little bit, helps Clive out. And, if you find value in what we do, it's just a way of supporting us and getting your hands on some products that are going to be beneficial to you. And there's a Secret Health Club as well. So that's a separate site, right?
Yes, but you can connect to it through the other one, but it's secrethealthclub.com. So that's the information. And I mean, honestly, there's some information that's just ludicrous. I interviewed Nicola Farmer recently. Have you come across Nicola?
The name rings a bell.
She's the one who teaches particularly young children how to see blindfolded. There's another part of our minds that we can connect to. The children explain it by saying we connect to our inner light. So everything you can do with your eyes open, you can do blindfolded if you're a child. She's now, for the first time, succeeded in teaching some adults this. So the next step is with blind people. But there's so much information on the Secret Health Club, you know, with people like that who are giving information that I think I and most people never would have thought was possible. See without your eyes. Who would have thought that was? And some of the children are learning in 5 minutes flat. You can see videos of them doing everything, painting, drawing, catching balls, everything you can do sighted. They're doing fully blindfolded.
Sounds
It's
like remote viewing right there.
well, as I say, all I can say is they explain they're doing it with their inner light.
Right.
They tell exactly which colour's which and all that.
Yeah. All right, Clive. Well, a very stimulating and very worthwhile conversation today. Appreciate you coming on. It always works out that way. And I'll probably bump into you at some point in the summer at some event or other because our paths tend to cross. You taking the magic chair out for a few?
Yeah, we're going to take 4 to the next event, and then probably 6 to Sound Beautiful. I expect it's a bigger event. You're going to go to Sounds Beautiful this year?
Oh, yeah. I'll be DJing on the Friday night.
Oh, perfect. Ideal.
Yeah.
Excellent.
See you on the dance floor.
No, I've
Oh,
got to do something beginning with E to do that. Um,
well, why not?
the thing that got me last year with a lot of these festivals is that so many of the vocalists are politically correct's the one word, but so many of the things were, talking about singing about politics or, how to change the world stuff. And I found that was at Crops Not Shops last year. It just got too much. I wanted to hear music rather than people giving their polemics.
Yeah, well, that's why I enjoy doing the DJ sets because I wallow in a lot of very dense, heavy information as part of my main work. So I really appreciate the opportunity at festivals to just drop some tunes and just raise the vibrations and have a happy dance floor out there with their hands in the air. I don't really play many DJ sets these days, so I really value the ones that I do. And it's just nice not to give talks sometimes and just to step away from the information and just enjoy some music.
Well, I couldn't agree more. For me, music is one of the best things out there.
Always used to be for me.
Have you lost the urge now?
Well, I used to be a full-time DJ, so I was immersed in it all the time. And then when I got into becoming an author and a public speaker, the sort of speech-based information took over from the music. And I was discovering things about the music industry and many of these musicians, whereby they weren't who I thought they were, and the industry had been weaponized and was being used to push certain agendas. So that kind of took the appeal away of it for me to a large extent. But I'm kind of rediscovering it now because I'm just finding that I need to gravitate more towards music. It's an essential way of coping in my life. It's a coping mechanism. I'm talking about the right sort of music. There's obviously some harmful stuff out there, but when I do play DJ sets now, it's very positive, soulful, uplifting music. That's the only music I'm interested in playing out, nothing heavy.
Yeah,
So,
no, I mean, you want people to be as happy as they can possibly be, I
well,
think.
yeah, I mean, I used to play hip hop, rap and hip hop, and I used to revel in all the dark, sort of heavy stuff and moody stuff. And I'm just not with that at all now. I don't listen to that stuff at all. I'm past it. I'm over it. Now I'm only interested in positive, uplifting music. I love the music that Danny Rampling plays. He's a big inspiration as a DJ because he's always played that happy, sort of positive stuff. And he always finds great tunes and always generates a great atmosphere at his sets. So I love listening to Danny Rampling play.
Can I give you two musical suggestions?
Yeah, go ahead.
If you want to relax and hear something I think sublime, uh, you can get it on Spotify, for instance. It's called I Am the Spirit Moon.
Okay.
I Am the Spirit Moon. It's from an album called Bark and Rumi, Rumi. And first time I heard it was somebody playing it live about 25 years ago. And I can't remember when I was last in tears because it was just so moving. Uh, the
Okay.
other one that I like is a track called Interrupted by Lamb Chop.
Right. Don't know that one.
Yeah, let me know what you think.
Yeah, I'll seek them out on YouTube. I'm sure they're there.
Probably.
Yeah.
Um, the uh, the guy who does the Bark and Rumis from Iran, so it's quite topical, and he's one of these people who's got this huge beard with a white streak going about 2 foot down it. Is very impressive. His name is Davud, Davud.
Hmm. Okay. All right, Clive. Thanks for a great conversation today. All the best.
Thank you. Take care.
Cheers.
This is just a wrap.
Vibrations, I'm picking up vibrations, I'm picking up vibrations, I'm picking up